One of the things you have to worry about when you're doing web design is that not everybody has the same fonts installed on their system. That's why we use the font family, serif, non-serif, generic fonts, and know that we know that there's something on everybody's computer that satisfies those requirements. But a more fun way is to use fonts that are downloadable onto the user's browser. And a great source for those is Google Fonts. So I'm at fonts.google.com, and we've got just on this first page, hundreds and hundreds of fonts. If you find one that you like, you can grab it. Let me scroll down here a bit. Find something that looks good for what I want to do. That's close. That's kind of wacky. This quote, almost before we knew it, we had left the ground, is from a 19th century science fiction novel. A Journey to Venus, I think it's called. That's a nice handwritten version. That's kind of a cool comic feature. Whoa, that's crazy. There's one I went and found before. It's called Londrina. It's not showing now, so I could search for Londrina. And there it is. So I click on it, and there are 4 versions of the font that I could choose: thin, light, regular, and black. I think the regular will do for me, so I'm going to select this style. And when you click on that button, you get some suggestions for how you can embed this font in your file. One is with a link, and you would insert this into your head section of your HTML. But I think the better option is to use the import directive. And you can see this is inside of a style element. So I will just copy that, and we'll use that for importing the font. We also need to use this CSS rule. We'll come back and grab that in a second. I've got a Visual Studio Code file already set up called google.html. And I'll insert the boilerplate. We'll call this Google Font. And then I'll paste in the style that I copied. It's unfortunate that this is just, there we go. You have to import the font before you can use it. So let me set this up. I'm going to have a body selector with the background color. Let's call it Azure. Azure's good. It's a very light blue. And I'm going to use this font to style a quote that I'll have on the page. So I'm going to have a class called quote, and for it I will say font family, and actually what I need to do is just grab this whole thing over here. I'll copy that. There, I'm using Londrina Solid Cursive. I'm going to float my quote to the right. I'm going to make it bigger than the normal size. I'll say 2 EM, so it's twice the size of plain font. I want to make a little box for the quote, so I'll say width is, I don't know, 300 pixels. And I'm going to have a different background color for the quote than for the body. Background color, let's call it light sky blue. That looks good. It's a little darker than the original one. We'll give it a little padding. And let's give a little margin around it so that the wrapped text gives it a little breathing space. So I'll save that as is. Then in the body down here, let's do an H1 for Google. Using Google Fonts. And I'll put in some Lorem hipster stuff. Then I'll do my div with a quote. And the quote that I have, I've already got the text selected. It's by Lily Tomlin. I'll put a break there. And before Lily Tomlin, I'll put in an M dash. I can use the secret code M dash to create that. And then let me add a couple of paragraphs of put in my hipster lorem. Let me copy that a couple of times. And I'll save that. So far I've got the body styled. I've got this quote class, but I don't actually use the quote class. I should say this is class equals quote. And now I'm ready to see what this looks like. So there I've got my text with the Lily Tomlin quote on the right hand side. I could do a little more styling on the quote to give maybe some space between the actual quote and Lily Tomlin's name, but you can tell that this is not the same font family as anything over here. These are all the default fonts in my browser. So there you go. The trick for using Google Fonts is you go to the Google Font website. You can search through. You can find. So remember, you can go back to the basic Google Font screen, scroll around, do selections based upon categories of fonts, or the language of the fonts, or font properties, and then you just click on it. And then if you select the style, if you don't get the pop-out window on the right, you can click on the right-hand side here and see that I've got Landrina Solid. I can remove all of those. I've got Roboto selected. I can remove that. And now I've got Festive, which is this one here. And here are the link data that I would use, but I'd probably prefer the import statement inside of a style element. And then for the selectors that I want to use this font for, I would insert this font family directive. You can also download the fonts if you want to. And if you scroll down, you'll see what the licensing rules are. These are licensed under OpenFont, and you're free to use them for all sorts of things. But as it says, this isn't legal advice, and I'm not giving legal advice. But it's a really nice resource for you to be able to use.